The junkyards of Dresna 5 stretched endlessly under a dull, copper-tinted sky. The sun, dim and distant, cast long shadows over the wreckage of thousands of forgotten machines. Jace Vorn adjusted the battered scarf around his face and trudged deeper into the ruins, his boots crunching over broken shards of metal and glass. His scanner beeped softly in his gloved hand, flickering with weak signals. He had heard the rumors. Everyone had. Somewhere in the heart of the wasteland lay a ship unlike any other, a vessel so dark it seemed to swallow the light, so old it predated the collapse. Some said it was cursed. Jace didn't believe in curses. He believed in big scores, and he needed one badly enough to risk anything. Wind howled between the dead ships, carrying the scent of rust and ozone. The graveyard was eerily quiet otherwise. No birds, no scavenger beasts, just the constant whine of the wind and the occasional groan of shifting metal. He kicked aside a piece of twisted hull and checked the scanner again. Still weak signals, but something stronger pulsed just ahead, almost like a heartbeat beneath the earth. He moved carefully, weaving between collapsed towers of scrap, towering engines, and shattered cockpits. His breath steamed in the chill air, every step drawing him closer to the source. The ground beneath his boots changed subtly, less debris, more hardened, compacted dust. He dropped to one knee and began clearing away the rubble with his hands, dirt and grime staining the fabric of his gloves. Sweat trickled down his neck despite the cold. Hours passed. His arms ached. Still he dug, driven by the insistent beeping of his scanner. Finally, as the last of the debris fell away, he saw it, a surface so black it seemed to drink in the dim sunlight around it. The black ship. It was buried halfway in the dirt, sleek and seamless, no markings, no visible engines or weapons. Just smooth, alien perfection. Jace stood there a moment, breathing hard, heart pounding. It was real. All the rumors, the stories whispered in bars and back alleys, they hadn't done it justice. He approached cautiously, each step making his heart hammer harder against his ribs. As he reached out a hand to touch the surface, a faint shimmer ran along the ship's skin, like ripples on a pond. A panel near the front flickered to life, emitting a thin beam of red light that scanned him from head to toe. He froze, half expecting the ship to explode or blast him into ash. Instead, with a soft hiss, a section of the hull slid open, revealing a narrow ramp leading into darkness. Cold, stale air breathed out from within, carrying the scent of old metal and something faintly sweet. Jace hesitated, every instinct in his body screaming at him to turn back, to leave this thing buried where he found it. But survival instincts didn't pay for tickets off dying worlds. Gritting his teeth, he stepped onto the ramp. The ship felt alive beneath his boots, vibrating faintly as he entered. The ramp sealed shut behind him without a sound, trapping him inside. The interior was unlike anything he had ever seen. The corridors twisted in ways that made his stomach churn, the walls pulsing softly with a dull blue light. There were no obvious controls, no signs of builders. It was as if the ship had grown organically rather than being constructed. His footsteps echoed oddly, the sound dampened by the strange material underfoot. Lights flared ahead of him, guiding him deeper into the ship's core. He followed, every sense on high alert, the hair on the back of his neck standing up. At the center of the ship, he found it, the heart. A massive spherical core hovered above the floor, spinning slowly, veins of violet energy crawling across its surface. It hummed softly, the sound low and soothing, almost like a lullaby. As he approached, holographic displays burst into life around him, showing star charts, weapon schematics, and flowing alien script he couldn't read yet somehow understood. The ship spoke, not in words exactly, but in impressions, feelings, images. Pilot accepted. The phrase echoed in his mind, clear and cold. He stumbled back, hands raised instinctively. "Wait," he said aloud, though there was no one to hear him. "I didn't sign up for this." But the ship wasn't asking. Systems flared awake around him. The ship's walls shifted, panels locking into place, dormant weapons stirring to life. Outside, the ground rumbled. Jace turned and sprinted back toward the entrance, skidding around twisting corridors that seemed to rearrange themselves under his feet. As he reached the ramp, he saw them, other scavengers, a whole convoy, their battered vehicles kicking up plumes of dust. Word traveled fast on Dresna 5, And now every lowlife and fortune hunter in the quadrant wanted a piece of the black ship. One of them spotted him and shouted, raising a weapon. Jace's heart leapt into his throat as a plasma bolt shot toward him, slamming harmlessly into the ship's hull. The ship reacted instantly. Turrets unfolded like snapping jaws, energy beams slicing through the scavenger vehicles with terrifying precision. In minutes, the convoy was reduced to burning wreckage, survivors fleeing into the wasteland. Jace stood frozen, staring out at the destruction. The ramp pulled him back inside, sealing him within the ship's strange embrace. He didn't know if he was the luckiest man alive, or the most doomed. The ship settled into a low hum as it lifted off the ground, dust and debris spiraling away in a furious storm beneath it. Jace gripped the nearest wall, trying to steady himself as the interior shifted and adjusted to his presence. The wall seemed to pulse with awareness, reacting to his movements, guiding him toward what he assumed must be the control center. Despite every instinct telling him to find a way out, another part of him, a deeper, hungrier part, knew there was no turning back now. He had bonded with the ship. Or rather, the ship had bonded with him. And there was no such thing as walking away from something like that. The corridors straightened, the confusing twists and turns smoothing into a direct path. Lights bloomed ahead, revealing a massive chamber unlike any bridge he'd ever seen. There was no captain's chair, no control panels or pilot seat. Instead, a large pedestal rose from the center of the room, cradling a swirling sphere of light. As he stepped closer, the sphere pulsed and holographic tendrils snaked out, connecting gently to his hands, arms, chest, and even his forehead. He gasped, feeling his mind stretch and merge with the ship's consciousness. In an instant, he understood. The ship didn't need a pilot to push buttons or pull levers, it needed a mind to command, a will to direct it. He could see through the ship sensors, feel the vibrations of the atmosphere outside, taste the ionized particles in the air. It was intoxicating, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. Images flooded his mind, star systems he had never visited, ancient battles fought in the dark of space, worlds consumed by fire and war. He saw flashes of the ship's creators, tall, spindly beings with eyes like liquid silver, building it in the dying days of their empire, desperate to leave a legacy that would outlast their extinction. The ship showed him more, the chaos left behind after the collapse, scavengers and warlords fighting over scraps of forgotten glory. And now, here he was, a nobody from a backwater mining colony, standing at the center of power so vast he could barely comprehend it. The weight of it pressed down on him, threatening to crush him. But beneath the fear, a spark of defiance flared. He had survived worse odds before. He wasn't about to let a haunted ship break him now. Outside, more scavenger convoys were converging on his position. Word had spread faster than he could have imagined. Jace could see them through the ship's optics, rusted tanks, jury-rigged hovercraft, and even a few light fighter craft. Some flew colors he recognized, gangs and raiders who would happily gut him for his boots, let alone a treasure like this. He felt the ship systems warming up, readying weapons that made human technology look like toys. He could destroy them all with a single thought. But Jace hesitated. Massacring them wouldn't just bring more enemies. It would bring armies, governments, the kind of attention he wasn't ready for. He needed a different plan. He focused on the ship's communication systems, fumbling until he found the right frequency. His voice, shaky at first but growing stronger, echoed across the bands. "This is Captain Jace Vorn of the Black Ship," he said, feeling slightly ridiculous giving himself a title. "Stand down and leave now, or be vaporized. This is your only warning." Some of the scavengers hesitated. He could see them exchanging nervous glances, second-guessing their approach. But others pressed forward, greedy and reckless. The ship responded automatically, targeting only the lead vehicles with pinpoint shots that disabled engines and weapons without killing the occupants. Flames and smoke rose into the air, but there was no bloodshed. The message was clear enough. The remaining forces scattered, retreating into the desert, leaving Jace alone once more. He slumped against the pedestal, breathing hard. The ship's systems quieted, the immediate danger gone. But he knew it wouldn't last. There would be others, better equipped, more determined. He needed a place to hide, to regroup, to figure out what to do with the monstrous gift he had stumbled into. The ship seemed to read his thoughts, displaying a series of coordinates, a derelict orbital station abandoned after the collapse, hidden deep in the shadow of a gas giant. Perfect. He set a course, feeling the ship lurch into higher orbit. Stars blurred past as the black ship punched through the atmosphere and into the void. Jace watched Dresna, 5 shrink behind him, a ball of rust and regret fading into the distance. He didn't know if he would ever return. Part of him hoped he wouldn't have to. The stars ahead glittered with promise and peril alike. Jace clenched his fists, feeling the ship's power thrumming through him, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled. Maybe, just maybe, he had found a way to outrun the life he'd been born into. Maybe he could build something better, if he survived long enough to seize it. Jace leaned against the cold metallic wall of the black ship's command center as the vessel drifted through deep space, hiding among the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. The hum of the engines had faded into a low, almost comforting vibration, like the ship itself was resting. He stared at the ancient navigation displays, now flickering with strange alien symbols he was just beginning to understand. Despite the temporary calm, his mind raced. He wasn't trained for this. He wasn't a captain or a warrior. He was just a salvager who'd gotten lucky, or cursed, depending on how you looked at it. Yet here he was, sitting at the heart of a war machine built by a civilization so old it was spoken of only in myths. Suddenly, a soft chime echoed through the chamber. Alerts bloomed across the displays. Something had entered the ship's perimeter. Jace moved toward the interface, his fingers trembling slightly as he engaged the external sensors. The holographic view expanded, showing a sleek, modern shuttle approaching at cautious speed. It bore the markings of the Guild of Free Traders, a powerful, semi-legal organization that controlled most of the salvage rights in this part of the galaxy. Jace swore under his breath. If they found him, it wouldn't take long before the news spread even further. The Guild didn't just take prizes like the black ship, they buried the people who found them. The shuttle hailed him, a sharp, professional voice cutting through the static. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Reese Lorne of the Guild vessel Halcyon Star. You are occupying Guild-protected salvage. Power down and prepare for inspection." Jace laughed bitterly. Occupying salvage? That was a nice way of saying, hand over the goods or die. His mind raced. He could try to bluff, but one look at the black ship systems told him that if it came to a fight, he'd outgun them without blinking. But again, too much attention would be fatal. He had to be careful. He opened a channel, trying to sound confident. "This is Captain Jace Vorn. This ship is under my command and is not subject to Guild claims. Recommend you leave immediately." There was a pause, a long one. He imagined Lorne staring at his console, trying to figure out what kind of idiot he was dealing with. Finally, the Guild captain replied, his voice colder now. "You have 30 seconds to comply, or we will board and seize by force." Jace felt the black ship system stirring, readying weapons automatically. He took a deep breath, centering himself. He needed another way. He accessed the black ship's archives, sifting through ancient files, looking for something useful. He found it, a transponder code so old and powerful it overrode modern salvage laws. A sovereign claim beacon. In the old empire, it was the equivalent of a king's personal seal. Even the Guild wouldn't dare challenge it publicly. He triggered the beacon, and the black ship pulsed with golden light. The shuttle halted abruptly, alarms no doubt screaming in their cockpit. Jace watched with grim satisfaction as the Halcyon Star's engines flared to life and the shuttle veered away sharply, retreating into the gas giant's upper atmosphere without another word. He closed the channel and slumped back against the wall, the adrenaline crash hitting him hard. He laughed softly, the sound strange in the empty command chamber. Maybe he wasn't as out of his depth as he thought. Still, he couldn't stay here. The Guild would be back, and next time they'd bring a fleet. He needed allies, people who could help him repair the black ship, people who could be trusted, or at least bought. He pulled up the star charts, searching for a destination. There, on the outer edges of the sector, was a place called Kestrel's Haven, a lawless station known for its mercenaries, smugglers, and independent engineers. Dangerous, but perfect for someone like him. He set a course, feeling the ship respond instantly to his will. The engines thrummed to life, pushing them deeper into space. As they moved, Jace explored more of the ship, walking corridors that stretched far beyond the command center. He found weapons bays with ordnance unlike anything he had ever seen, workshops filled with tools that could manipulate matter at the molecular level, and strange chambers where the walls seemed alive, pulsing with energy. The black ship wasn't just a vessel, it was a living weapon, a relic of a war that had reshaped galaxies. In one chamber, he discovered a sealed pod, slightly raised on a platform. Curious, he approached, and the pod hissed open with a burst of vapor. Inside lay a figure, human in appearance but clearly enhanced. The man's skin was threaded with fine metallic lines, and his chest rose and fell slowly. A stasis pod. Jace stared, uncertain whether he had just found a friend, a tool, or another threat. He checked the ship's interface, translating the alien glyphs as best he could. The occupant was listed simply as First Warden. Before he could decide what to do, the man's eyes snapped open, glowing faintly with golden light. Jace stumbled back, his hand reaching instinctively for the sidearm he no longer carried. The Warden sat up slowly, scanning the room, then fixed his gaze on Jace. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and commanding. "Who commands this vessel?" Jace hesitated for only a moment before answering. "I do." The Warden studied him for a long, tense moment, then nodded once, a deep bow of his head. "Then I serve." Jace blinked, his mind racing with questions he didn't even know how to ask yet. Whatever journey he had stumbled into, it had just gotten a lot more complicated, and a lot more interesting. Jace sat in the command chair of the black ship, the newly awakened Warden standing silently beside him. The vastness of space stretched out before them, a river of stars and swirling nebulae. The ship moved with a grace Jace was only beginning to understand, responding to his slightest thought like an extension of his own body. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. The Warden had said little since awakening, merely following Jace and observing, occasionally offering cryptic guidance on the ship's systems. His presence was unnerving, but Jace had the feeling he was being judged, weighed against standards he didn't know existed. Ahead, Kestrel's haven came into view, a massive, haphazard structure floating in orbit around a barren moon. Its metal exterior was pitted and scarred from decades of meteoroid strikes and minor battles. Ships of every shape and size buzzed around it, docking, departing, or just loitering while deals were brokered and alliances were broken. Jace tightened his grip on the armrests. This was it. His first real move since claiming the black ship. He had to play this smart. He keyed the comms, adjusting his voice to sound confident. "Kestrel's Haven Control, this is Independent Vessel Nomad, requesting docking clearance." A burst of static, then a bored voice crackled back, "Nomad, you're clear for Bay 37. Pay your fees or you'll be paying with blood." Jace sighed and guided the ship into a slow descent. As they docked, heavy clamps locked onto the ship's hull with a deep metallic clang. He rose from the chair and turned to the Warden, who regarded him impassively. "Stay here. Watch the ship. If anyone tries to board, do whatever you do." The Warden simply inclined his head. Jace pulled on his jacket, checked the concealed blaster at his hip, and headed for the airlock. As he stepped into the station's crowded concourse, the stench of oil, sweat, and old metal hit him like a wall. Merchants shouted over one another, offering everything from black market cybernetics to rare alien artifacts. Rough-looking mercs leaned against walls, eyeing newcomers with open suspicion. Jace kept his head down and made his way to a dingy bar tucked away behind a vendor selling questionable meat skewers. Inside, the air was thick with smoke, and the low murmur of dangerous conversations filled the space. He spotted his contact easily. A short, wiry woman with a cybernetic eye and a mechanical arm nursed a drink at the far end of the bar. He approached cautiously. "You Lyra?" he asked. The woman looked him up and down, assessing. "Depends. You the fool who claimed the ghost ship." Jace stiffened but nodded. Lyra chuckled and gestured for him to sit. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. And maybe a death wish." They talked for hours, negotiating terms. Lyra was an engineer of rare skill, specializing in restoring ancient tech. Exactly what he needed. In exchange, she wanted a share of whatever tech or profits they uncovered, and immunity from whatever enemies he made. It was steep, but he had no choice. As they finalized the deal, Jace noticed a group of rough-looking guild operatives enter the bar. Their eyes scanned the room, searching. He swore under his breath. The guild wasn't going to let the black ship slip away that easily. "Time to go," he muttered. Lyra caught the look and followed without question. They slipped out the back of the bar and into the maze of maintenance corridors, moving fast. Shouts echoed behind them as the guild agents realized their quarry was escaping. Jace drew his blaster, leading Lyra through twisting, rusted passageways. They burst onto the dock just as the first shots rang out. Jace returned fire, covering Lyra as she sprinted for the black ship's airlock. The Warden was waiting. Without a word, he raised his hand, and a shimmering barrier of energy snapped into existence between them and their attackers. The guild agent's shots sparked harmlessly against it. Jace stared in awe before pushing Lyra inside. Once aboard, the ship's systems came alive with a roar. The docking clamps were overridden, alarms blaring throughout the station. As they pulled away, Jace saw small patrol ships scramble to intercept, but the black ship simply outpaced them, slipping into the void with impossible speed. Breathing hard, Jace turned to Lyra, who was staring around the ship with wide, disbelieving eyes. "You weren't kidding," she said. "This thing is a legend." Jace allowed himself a grim smile. "Welcome aboard." The Warden stood silently behind them, a silent sentinel. For a long moment, none of them spoke, the magnitude of what they had just escaped settling in. Then Lyra clapped her mechanical hand on Jace's shoulder with a metallic thud. "All right, Captain. Where to next?" Jace turned back to the NAV console, where a dozen potential destinations blinked at him like promises or threats. He grinned. "Somewhere the guild won't find us. Somewhere we can start making history." The black ship surged forward, slipping into the dark between the stars. The black ship drifted through deep space, its sleek frame nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. Inside the command deck, Jace sat in the captain's chair, leaning forward, studying the holographic display that floated before him. Lyra was sprawled at a nearby console, her mechanical fingers dancing across the controls as she familiarized herself with the ship's ancient but astonishingly advanced systems. The Warden stood near the viewport, as still and silent as ever, gazing outward as if seeing something none of them could. They had escaped Kestrel's haven, but Jace knew that had only been the beginning. The guild wouldn't forget. They wouldn't forgive. A faint chime echoed through the ship. Lyra frowned and turned to Jace. "We're picking up a distress signal," she said. "It's old, really old. Probably a trap." Jace's eyes narrowed. The smart move would be to ignore it. They had no obligations, no cause to play hero. But he couldn't help himself. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the ghost of a conscience he thought he'd left behind. "Bring it up," he said. The display shifted, showing a tiny, crippled vessel adrift in space, its hull scarred and broken. No life signs detected, but the signal persisted, a steady ping, like a heartbeat refusing to give up. Lyra shook her head. "This is a bad idea." Jace stood, feeling the ship hum under his boots as he made the decision. "Prep the boarding gear. Warden, you're with me." The Warden turned and inclined his head. As they suited up, Jace tried to shake off the gnawing sense of foreboding that gripped him. It wasn't fear exactly, more like the feeling you get when standing on the edge of a cliff and your instincts whisper that something unseen is waiting below. They crossed the expanse between the two ships in a small shuttle, the black ship systems monitoring every move. As they docked, the shuttle connected with a soft clang. The derelict vessel loomed before them, dark and silent. Inside, the ship was a graveyard. Panels hung loose from the walls, and the floor was littered with debris. Dim emergency lights cast long shadows, making every movement seem more sinister. Jace moved cautiously, his blaster drawn, while the Warden strode beside him, seemingly unbothered by the atmosphere of decay. They followed the faint beacon deeper into the ship, past ruined corridors and shattered compartments. Finally, they found it, a small cargo bay, its doors barely hanging on their hinges. Inside, instead of survivors, they found crates. Old, battered crates, each one marked with symbols Jace didn't recognize. He approached the nearest crate and pried it open. Inside, nestled in foam, were devices that looked far too advanced for a ship this old. Alien tech. Unmistakably valuable. Lyra's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Jace, you seeing this? Those markings match ancient syndicate tech. That stuff is worth a fortune." Jace grinned despite himself. Maybe their luck was finally turning. But just as he reached for another crate, the Warden stiffened, his hand shooting out to block Jace. "Trap," the Warden said simply. A split second later, the walls erupted with movement. Hidden turrets unfolded from the ceiling, and small drones emerged from recessed alcoves, weapons humming to life. Jace dove for cover, returning fire as the Warden stepped forward, raising a shimmering energy shield to deflect the attacks. They fought their way back toward the shuttle, every step a brutal test. Jace's pulse pounded in his ears as he fired shot after shot, barely slowing the relentless drones. The Warden moved like a force of nature, his strikes precise and devastating. They reached the shuttle just as the ship's core began to implode, the ancient vessel shuddering around them. Jace slammed the launch controls, and the shuttle blasted away, a shockwave rippling through space behind them as the derelict exploded in a shower of debris. Back aboard the black ship, Lyra met them in the airlock, her face pale. "What the hell happened?" Jace shook his head, stripping off his helmet. "Trap. Someone left that ship out here like bait." Lyra swore under her breath. "Who would do that?" The Warden answered, his voice low and grim. "Enemies of the black ship. They fear its return." Jace exchanged a glance with Lyra. They were playing a bigger game than he had realized. Bigger stakes, bigger dangers. He made his way back to the bridge and sank into the captain's chair, the weight of it all settling on his shoulders. On the view screen, the stars stretched out, infinite and unknowable. Jace knew now that they couldn't outrun what was coming. The guild would come. Others would come. And whatever ancient power the black ship represented, it wasn't done with them yet. He looked at Lyra and the Warden, feeling a strange sense of unity. They weren't just running anymore. They were fighting for something. For freedom. For survival. For the chance to write their own legend in the dark between the stars. Jace leaned forward, a fierce grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Set a course," he said. "Let's see who else wants a piece of us." The engines of the black ship flared to life, and with a soundless roar, they disappeared into the endless night.